There's no way, is there, to sugarcoat the message from President Tinubu to his cabinet ministers and top-level staff. Deliver high-quality performance or face the axe. This was the president's management philosophy laid bare at a retreat for ministers. There'll be no moderate motivation, he said, only high-intensity action. And if you want to be part of the team, then be clear on your role and responsibility and give it all you've got, because Fortress Tinubu will not be breached. And if you think it was just words, then think again, because Mr. Tinubu took it even further, mandating all his top staff to sign what he called a bond of understanding with himself and his ministers. He's also set up a delivery unit headed by Hadiza Bala Usman, who will deliver or ensure that delivery targets are met. To some, the president might have shown his slightly ruthless side, but his supporters say that's the take charge ability of a leader who wants to leave his staff in no doubt that they must be fully aligned with his agenda.
If you are performing, nothing to fear. If you miss the objective, we review. If no performance, you leave us. No one is an island, and the buck stop on my desk. That is why we established Resort Delivery Unit. At the end of this retreat, they are going to sign a bond of understanding between you, the ministers, the permanent secretary, and myself. I've taken a young lady, very dynamic, Hadiza Bala Usman, to head that delivery unit. If you have any complaint about her, see me. If you're ready to work with her, stay there. Delivery, yes. We must achieve it.
Unequivocal, President Tinubu there. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the former chairman of the board of directors of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, Kyari Bukar, who was also the MD and CEO of the Central Securities Depository of the Nigerian capital markets, and is currently heading a clutch of other businesses, including the Africa operations of Inlax, the banking and e-payment firm. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Good evening, Charles.
Because we know you had a lot of other things to do, but you took the time to come over. You heard a bit of the tough-talking president there, saying he must achieve success by all means necessary, and that his cabinet is there to help him do that, or they would get the sack. So no mincing of words. Were you impressed?
It's an impressive performance today. It's a clear indication of what a leader should be and how a leader should address his next line of people that report to him, which in this case, in the presidential system, is the cabinet. So he has to hold the cabinet members responsible and be accountable to him. So setting the KPIs is fantastic. Periodic review of the KPI is tough, but must be done. And the other thing that had been lacking in Nigeria, possibly for the last 20-something years of democracy, is the consequence management. What do you do when a minister is not performing, or when a permanent secretary is not performing, or when both are not performing? See, the issue of low performance is simple in leadership principle, or in the school of management. You get rid of the person, or you help build the person if they are slightly incompetent. If they're completely incompetent, it's cheaper to remove them and get someone else and do the job. If, however, it is a slight omission or wrong data coming in and taking the right action, but because it was facing the wrong direction, you tend to go backwards, then those are correctable reviews that you can actually help develop the person into a performing person. Now, there is a second element, which is where a person willfully defrauds or there was a certain element of malfeasance. It shouldn't even stop at sacking. You should go further because you have entrusted people's trust onto those people. You have to also punish them by prosecuting them.
So corruption must be tackled head on. Does the directive, I mean, watching the president there, feel a bit autocratic, though? Because, I mean, some have suggested that it appears to be showing the president's more ruthless side.
Indeed, in a presidential system, within the domain of the presidency, the president has what in my language is called, he has the knife and the meat, so to speak. So within that domain, he should be autocratic, if you will. If he is a consensus builder, it can be the style of management, but he has to make sure that there are certain things that he would not condone, and that would be low performance. Now, if that is clear, and we see an example of that, say 6 months from now or a year from now, people would say, yes, that's the kind of leader that the nation wants. Now, if, however, we don't see much, or if there are some sacred cows, then as a nation, people would say, well, we are going back to business as usual. And Nigeria at this stage of all the horrible economic issues we are facing, there is no time for us to go through any kind of experimentation. We just have to pull through, shoot, and then go back and reassess. I think if that's the posture of Mr. President, I think the country, it would be better for the country. Let me put it that way.
Well, we're going to talk about the economy in a minute, because, I mean, that is your area of expertise. But looking at that cabinet, do you think it's populated by highly motivated and capable employees who can deliver, or are they just politicians who are used to being moderately motivated? I mean, I'm wondering what your thoughts are in that regard.
There are a few bright spots in the cabinet. There are some young people that have had experience in the financial services industry. There are some seasoned executives that have performed in their various endeavor. And of course, there is also a mixture of many politicians or political players. Now, the problem with a political player, be it a state governor or somebody who had been operating at the subnational level, coming into the federal structure, even if they were a performing governor, it would be very difficult for them to execute at a cabinet level. Now, I may be mistaken.
Yeah, because they're an executive
in their domain,
position.
And now they are going to be one of 40 or one of 40, whatever number the cabinet members are. And they also have to be communicating up and also at their level. That may be a very tough thing unless these people already have that discipline in them.
Absolutely.
So by having this charge by Mr. President, everyone must sit down and reflect and say, okay, I think the game is not business as usual anymore, and therefore hopefully we may see some positive behavior, if you will, or attitude. And so the motivation level, if it is moderate, you better raise it up to high to survive.
Absolutely. So is it your sense that it has now set the direction for the country over the next 4 years, or was it a bit thin on sort of detail? Because, I mean, he sounded like he's now really woken up to the monumental challenge ahead. I mean, in a country where 63% of the electorates didn't actually vote for him, the way to bring them on side is obviously to deliver on development.
Exactly. And then one other thing that, I mean, the adage of the proof of the pudding is in the eating comes in, doesn't it? Because you can say one thing. The other elements is actually the hard work, which is that the KPIs need to be clear. And hopefully it would also be transparent in the sense that we will all see the dashboard.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And if the dashboard is there, then there is going to be no hiding place for the low performer.
Absolutely.
And in that case, it would be better for the nation that we have such a charge by Mr. President.
Yes.
So the details have to be worked out, whether it is Balaus Hadiza as the person who is directing, and also the ministers themselves and PAMSECs, because they are the ones that are the custodians of those KPIs.
Absolutely.
They need to come up with what I call smart objectives or goals that's clear, clear enough and measurable enough that there is no ambiguity.
So in that regard, what do you see as the biggest challenges he faces now? I would imagine the economy would be up there.
The economy is top of the mind for somebody who is in the market as a private sector player. And of course, there are a few other things. One is the situation vis-a-vis our infrastructure, because you cannot have a humming economy or a growing economy if you do not have the fundamental building blocks, which are the infrastructure, both hard infrastructure as well as things such as education, healthcare. And the other one that is of fundamental in this country is security. The security situation is still abysmal. And it's not something that has been addressed fully yet. And so that is also another segment of the issues or challenges we face as a nation that need to be addressed by Mr. President.
Right, but in terms of getting off to a good start, we understand from reports today that the central bank has delivered on over 75% of outstanding matured foreign exchange forwards in some banks. And also Business Day is reporting that the CBN has also cleared a significant part of the trapped funds for Emirates and Etihad Airlines, which suggests that flights to Dubai might resume soon. I mean, that's positive if confirmed, isn't it?
It's positive if confirmed. As also a player who has been in that space, I would say that the initial information we've received, our bankers have confirmed in one way or the other that the international banks forwards are amongst the first to be dealt with, and also some of the lower tickets transactions that have also been in that forward bucket are also going to be addressed. The conversation is that sometime towards the end of today and most probably by tomorrow, a lot more would also be allocated. In which case the central bank governor's pronouncement is coming to bear. And I would believe that in the next few weeks, the market confidence from international players may begin to show in the inflow of dollars into our economy. And once that starts happening, I think for the immediate economic situation of FX liquidity may be addressed. And the other thing that had happened in the last day or two is that the central bank had raised the OMO rates, that's the open market buyback situation. So the interest rates that they used was about 21%, which essentially means that some of the local currency liquidity may actually go towards treasury bills, and that may also put less demand pressure on FX if that were to continue. So there are a number of forces that are in motion that to me may begin to address the issue of FX liquidity.
I have to say that listening to you, I'm absolutely astonished at your knowledge of sort of the economy and things like that, because you actually hold degrees in physics and nuclear engineering. Yes. I mean, how do you end up in business and in the economy? I mean, we're not just talking about, I mean, actually being chairman of the board of directors of the NESG.
Indeed, it's a subject that is actually very dear to one's heart. But as some of my mentors and teachers, I call them teachers because they actually sat me down and taught me some of these things and recommended books that I have to read. I'm a bibliophile. I love reading. And
reading
any
is
subject, yes,
I love to read.
Any subject that I am curious about, I put my energy onto it. And economy seemed to be one of those things that very early on, about 20-something years ago, when I stumbled on, a gentleman that up to today is my boss, Malam Hayatuddin,
brilliant
and also
guy,
Mrs. Okonjo,
a great friend and a brilliant man.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
So once you are in those companies,
absolutely.
you just have to go brush up and make sure that you are up to scratch on certain subject matters. So to me, I've been very fortunate to get some leaders or teachers that have actually guided me in my life.
Well, you've certainly been well taught. But let's just return to the issue of the economy, because a minute ago we're talking about the FX market. But meanwhile, of course, immense hardship still brought on millions of Nigerians following that abrupt removal of subsidy, disposable incomes and demand dropping, the cost of running businesses going up, along with rising fuel and food costs, and the Naira daily falling in value. I mean, how much faith do you have in what the government is doing about these problems? Obviously, you've talked about the FX bit, but the other bits?
The other bits are actually the thing that government needs to pay attention to. When the proponent of cash grant came up very early in the life of this administration, I was one of the people that initially reacted negatively to it. Rethinking about it, if we can do it in a manner that is transparent, use digital platforms to reach out to the most vulnerable of us, then it would probably, in the temporary space, resolve certain matters. However, the most important thing is actually for us to look inwards. By that I mean we need to resuscitate manufacturing. Of course, the service sector is growing and it has employed a lot of people. But there are 2 or 3 segments of the economy that we need to invest money in and make sure that we bring up productivity. One is agri-value chain, from seeding, planting, harvesting, all the way to processing. And 2 is light manufacturing. There is no reason why we shouldn't be building components that go into our equipment or vehicles or what have you, because it doesn't require much, a lot of capital investment to be producing some of those smaller items. So light manufacturing, where I have actually seen examples in Ethiopia and some of the other African countries where when they embrace it, within a period of a decade or a decade and a half, you begin to see self-sufficiency and less export of certain goods and commodities. You may look the other way when you are doing these sort of things, because at the end of the day, there is a goal in mind. And that is what had transformed countries like India, for example, or South Korea. But we need to create our own. I'm not saying let's go and copy and paste. We have to also customize some of these to our local nuances and see how best we can address the issue of population growth and a GDP growth that is higher than population growth for us to actually become wealthy. Yeah, which is what we need to confront.
Of course, inflation at 26.72%, predicted to hit 30% by Christmas. Not much hope in that, but we've got a couple of minutes before we have to end this brilliant chat. But is there a single economic policy proposal that you would recommend to the president that has the capacity to make a real difference and turn these unthinkably dreadful living conditions into something more palatable?
It will be a combination of things. I would not, there is no magic silver bullet in resolving the Nigerian economic predicament at the moment. However, if I were to advise the president, or indeed the policymakers that are in charge of the economy, a few things need to be put in place. And I'm not talking about the quick wins, because the quick wins may mean that we need to borrow more to address the impending crisis. But trying to respond to the urgent matters sometimes make you pick your eyes off the important matters. And the important matters are longer term in nature. How can we equip our growing youth bulge and give them the necessary skills for them to be entrepreneurial rather than go look for jobs, and for us to create an enabling environment that would ensure that not government that finances things, but investors, investors whether local or foreign, coming in and saying this is a market that already has a large target market, but if everything is done right, it will be humming and growing. And that is the basic infrastructure: electricity, good road networks, excellent or exceptionally well-developed rail network, and then all other policies that are hurdles to starting and running a business, such as the Presidential Enabling Business payback, those sort of things where private sector businesses will complain to government, and we need to address and remove those hurdles so that the private sector plays its role. A country where the largest and most powerful sector is government will never develop. But a country that shifts this gradually to the private sector tend to do better, even if it means that you incentivize by providing some of the necessary core infrastructure to be built by the government, but then the private sector is encouraged to come and play its role unhindered or little or no obstruction. Then you would see everybody coming and beating at our doors for us to open, rather than be fearful of our young people leaving the country.
Those are very good points, and I want to thank you very much indeed. Very, very grateful for you to have come in here. Kyari Bukar is the former chairman of the board of directors of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. He was also the MD and CEO of the Central Securities Depository of the Nigerian Capital Markets. He's currently heading many businesses, including the Africa operations of Inlax, the banking and e-payment firm. And believe it or not, he studied physics and nuclear engineering. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Charles.
A true Nigerian.
Thanks.